Welcome back to the second session of this sports special brought to you by Sports 731 Network, the finest sports network in West Tennessee and in the state. Also, they bring you all kinds of high school and college information and expanding all the time. Sports 731, the leader in West Tennessee. I'm here and very fortunate to have today Dr. Robert Rooks with me, who wrote the book 100 Years of Haywood Football. If you've watched Section 1 of this sports special, you know about his expertise and what he's got. Former player. He's a play-by-play man for the Haywood Tomcats right now. And I'm Coach Joe Holloway. I do play-by-play for Sports 731 along with a lot of fine people. And we're going to have lots of games covered, like all 5 schools here in Jackson. We got Jackson Christian. We got Northside, Southside, JCM. We've got Liberty Tech, or Liberty Technology School, that only has a history going back to 2003. We got Henry County, Huntington, a state champ from last year, McKenzie, who won a state championship a couple of years ago, Peabody, who has 4 state championships to their credit and went a long way in last year's playoffs, Westview, winners of the 21 and 25 state championship. Ty Simpson, quarterback, at 1. And now you can watch this network and get his brother Graham Simpson, and also Union City, who has multiple state championships in a rebuilding program. They're going to be a great team again and threaten for state championships. But Sports 731 Network, bringing you the best in high school football, but they bring you basketball. And we were at the state tournament last year with baseball, and you can hear people trying to send us messages right now. I will make a note of this. Note that I got on July 15th, 2026 at 9 a.m. in the conference room of the City Hall at Huntington, and we covered that team and had some great broadcast with them. I got to do the Peabody side. They have great people working with their side, including Jimmy Pritchard, a former coach. But Coach Jimmy Pritchard, and Coach Eric Swinson will discuss the history of Mustang football. And again, that is July 15th of this year, 2026. If there's any changes, we'll try to let you know. And, of course, Coach Swinson was offensive coordinator from 96 to 2004, became head coach in 2008, and or 2008, if you want to say it that way. In his first year as head coach of the Mustangs, he finished 3rd in District 7. In 2025, the Mustangs won their 2nd state championship. And, of course, the field is named for him. Of course, that's Paul Ward Stadium. And we've got some famous coaches we're going to talk about. And if we leave somebody out, Coach Rooks and I call him Coach because he knows he could coach if he wanted to. And to play for John Hooper, you almost had to be a coach on the field. Former quarterback, but became – Robert, did they call you a wingback, or were you just one of the 3 in the dead eye or stacked eye behind Rocky?
I don't know what they called me, but I was in the backfield and more of a blocking back. But what was pretty cool, every now and then I'd fake blocking in the line and slide out in the flat. So Rocky Felk had an option. We had so many great options. Rocky could have run it. He could have handed off to Steve Stutes. We had Lynn Tolliver running a deep post pattern that you could have thrown to. And then I had a little sideline out about 8 yards in the flat that he could throw to me. But more than anything else, 9 people blocked for Steve and Rocky. That's what we did, and it worked pretty well.
And, folks, Steve Stutes, who played later at Mississippi State, he could cow-tromp you. That brings up another opponent. We've talked to you a little bit about Dyersburg High School, and they started football about the same time. They were in the old Big Ten Conference. Their coach now is Bart Stowe, and we'll talk about Bart because he's got a very famous dad that coached for a while against. But they had a guy when Robert and I played named Danny Jeffries, who was quicker than a hiccup.
Yeah, went on up to UT, and they had a good year. We beat them in 1968, but Danny Jeffries was a speedster, ran the 100-yard dash in track, and was a good athlete at Dyersburg. Dyersburg had some great players back in the 40s. They won the Big Ten championship several times, so Dyersburg's well thought of. But let's go back, and what about some names? What about Nanky-Poo?
Nanky-Poo, that is, folks, it's real. Robert and I are not making that up. They had a pretty decent nickname, but it wasn't as close to a great nickname as some other schools had. And we're gonna let Robert elaborate because we got all kinds of schools. John Tucker once coached at one of the schools we're going to talk about. And it's not Milan High School
That's right.
either.
That's right. Well, Nancypoo, I love the names of these little communities in Lauderdale County. And my mom grew up and raised and went to Ripley High School. My grandparents were teachers there. But Nancypoo was a spot out in Lauderdale County that had a high school, believe it or not. They had a 3-year high school in 1922, and in 1927 they went to a 4-year school. They actually played football, believe it or not. Nancypoo High School from 1930 to 1938. They weren't very successful, I have to say. The best year that I could find was in 1937. They won 3 games and lost 3 games. They never had a winning season. They were scheduled to play Haywood County in 1938, but for some reason it never developed. But they're the Nancypoo team, and what a name.
Well, it's probably good they didn't play Haywood County.
Well, I don't know how good Haywood would have been in 1938 either. Decent, I guess. And what about in Lake County? We know today it's Lake County. Well, prior to 1963, it was not Lake County. There were 2 high schools in the county. You had Tiptonville High School and Ridgely High School. They consolidated in 63, and now they're the Lake County Falcons, the green and white, green and gold, representing the 2 colors from Ridgely and Tiptonville. Lake County's won 3 state championships, believe it or not. So give them some credit. But let's go to nicknames. Now, I hadn't talked about, and it's not a bad nickname, what about Ridgely? Would you even think about, I had to look it up. I didn't know Ridgely, what nickname, they were the Green Wave. But one of my favorite nicknames, and I cite this a lot on my broadcast of Tomcat football games, but what about Tiptonville? Think about where they're located. But Tiptonville High School, to me, has one of the greatest, at least in West Tennessee, if not at the state of Tennessee. The Tiptonville High School mascot or nickname, they were the Earthquakes.
Yes, they were, and not because John Tucker caused any earthquakes. They were named for all the things. Okay, you got to tell the story. My high school, Jackson High, had a name change. We were not, everybody, you feared the Golden Bears in the 60s, but they weren't the Golden Bears all the time.
And that brings up the guy that you have to, when you have a sports show, and here we are in the center of Madison County, you've got to talk about Tory Omen. And what a man. Joe knew him. I never met Mr. Omen, Coach Omen. Great guy, and he really righting the ship here and got things going, made them what they were. Tory Omen coached here, came from Minnesota, came in 1931, started coaching till 1943, and the war interrupted, and Uncle Sam called, and he had to leave, and a fellow named DeLay had to fill in while he was gone. Then Omen came back and coached from 1946 to 1954. In his length of time, that was 20 years of coaching. He really had it going before the war. He didn't do as well coming out. In the 9 years after he returned from the war, he only had 3 years that he won 7 games or more, so he had more losses than wins. His overall record here at Jackson, Tory Omen, 149 wins, 49 losses, 17 ties. But what Joe's talking about, in 1934, how about this one? I tell you, you think Jackson wasn't tough? In 1934, number one, they were the Yellow Jackets in 1933. He changed the name. I don't know, he had some clout. He said, here's what we're going to do, guys, and that's what they did. The Jackson High School football team went from Yellow Jackets to Golden Bears. And when you were there, Joe, from 1934 all the way to 1969, Jackson Golden Bears, and you would tremble when you heard them walking or running on the football field. But Tory Omen, in 1934, guided the Jackson Golden Bears to a 10-0 record, and not only were they undefeated, that team was unscored on. How about that?
Yes. Absolutely, and had they been able to put their record with, because I believe we ended our existence with 285 wins or something like that. But put that with what JCM has, and we would be one of the top 10 schools in the state in total wins. But they don't put them together because you obviously added Mary High, who was coached by Duck Green at one time. And actually, Mary had a good football team around 1930. It doesn't show up in a lot of the record books, and I had to dig hard to find that. But there are other great nicknames and other great schools, unusual schools in our territory here. And Robert, you got any other schools you want to talk about?
Well, I want to mention some people too. We got on Tory, Omen. I want to mention, you can't go without mentioning Jack Kane. Played high school football in Brownsville, but what a coach. He won the only state championship Humboldt has in 1979. That team went 13-0, undefeated. But here's what you say, how good was Jack Kane? I tell you how good he was. How can you come back to a town 3 times? He was hired as Humboldt's football coach, left to go to Covington. Hired at Humboldt to be a football coach, left to go to Trenton. Hired at Humboldt, football coach. So he coached at Humboldt 3 different times. Jack Kane won 241 games. Who else in West Tennessee had those kind of wins? Jim Stowe, how about that?
Yep.
Same number of victories at Lexington. Coach Jim Stowe, 241 wins. But Jack Kane won 73% of his games as a coach. He was a gentleman, great athlete that went to Murray State, but coached all those different places, even coached 1 year up at Murray, Kentucky. Richard Ross, we've mentioned him. He had 2 runners-up, couldn't win the championship, but at JCM had 2 runners-up as a head football coach. Paul Kaywood at Lexington, another coach that did well and highly respected, coached there for 11 years. And I've got to mention Tiny Knee, my grandfather at Ripley. And
they're getting a new stadium. Are they still going to call this one Tiny Knee Stadium?
As far as I know, they're keeping it the same location. They're just renovating, and it's Tiny Knee Stadium and Jim Fitzhugh Field. So as far as I know, Joe, they're going to keep those names.
Won't be ready for their opening games. It may be the Dyersburg game before they can play in it.
I hope they get it done this year. But let me tell you about Tiny Knee. He grew up in Wabash, Indiana, came to Ripley and coached and never left, came in 1927. But that rascal was the Indiana 100-yard dash champion and the 220-yard dash champion in the state of Indiana in 1923. He was on the all-state team. You know, you've heard about the 4 Horsemen of Notre Dame?
Yes.
Well, one of those players was named Crowley. Well, he made the all-state team. My grandfather made the all-state team. Those other 3 horsemen, they had to go to second team because Tiny Knee was on first team All-Indiana college players. And he set the state record with the javelin throw his senior year at Wabash College.
Heck of an athlete. That's where you got your athletic ability from.
No, he surpassed me in many ways. We mentioned, let's talk about Martin. Before they consolidated and became Westview, Martin consolidated with Sharon High School in 1970 to become Westview. But who coached there? Coach Babe Felker, Edwin Felker, Rocky Felker's dad, was the head football coach at Martin, 1956, 57, and 58. And Martin's got 2, as you mentioned, 2 state championships. Ripley. Haywood County's never really had a guy that made it big in the NFL. I can name you 2 that came out of Ripley, and they're brothers, and I can't think of one of them's first name, the other. They played for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Ramon Foster. And his brother, they both played pro ball forever. And what
Renardo, does that sound right?
Yeah, that's right. Renardo and Ramon Foster. They big-time players came out of Ripley.
Renardo played with Atlanta and St. Louis 2007 to 2010. Ramon, of course, you're right, Pittsburgh Steeler. He played 10 years, 2009 to 2019.
Yep.
And played at UT also. We'll get that in there because our good friend, and he was a football player. Check Facebook out. 65, well, he's number one in our heart, but 65 played for Southside. Jordan Taylor, who is the guy that really fuels, he's the energy behind Sports 731 Network. And we're going over. What about Paul Ward and Walter Kilzer? Those two gentlemen we cannot leave out.
No, you're right. Walter Kilzer, I met, he came to Brownsville to see our museum, and what a gentleman.
Yes.
And tough nose, and he played in the very first Big Ten Conference Championship in 1940. He played for Peabody in Trenton. Peabody played Fayette County. You know what the final score of that game was? 53-0, Walter Kilzer.
Wow.
Peabody, they won. I said, and where did they play the game? In Trenton. I said, Coach, I said, that ain't fair. Hey, y'all were so good. How did you get to play the game at home like that? Well, we did, but they did. That's just the way it went at that time. But at Peabody, at Freed Field in 1940, Walter Kilzer beat, and his team, he had R.A. Long on that team. It was a great football team in 1940.
Who later coached at Humboldt.
That's right. But Walter Kilzer, a great player, and then coached for 31 years at Peabody, and later went on and coached at what today is USJ. Walter Kilzer was the third football coach.
And he's the guy that hired Mickey Marley.
That's right. Well,
as
it was
an
John. You had
John Hooper was at Old Hickory Academy.
That's right.
Larry McBride was their first
That's
coach.
right. Larry
John
McBride
was
first,
the second,
John Hooper second, Walter Kilzer third, and Kilzer hired Mickey Marley. That's right. Walter Kilzer won 149 games coaching at Trenton. And I'll tell you what's interesting, too. In 1938, when you won a county championship in Gibson County between Milan, Trenton, and Humboldt, that was a pretty impressive feat. Those three teams didn't like each other.
And, folks, if you can see what I'm holding up, I'll let Robert continue.
That's the 38.
This is the 38 Peabody team, isn't it, Robert?
And Walter Kilzer would have been a sophomore on that team. But in 1938, they played, oddly enough, Trenton played all of their home games in Humboldt because Freed Field wasn't ready for play yet.
Historic Freed Field, which they don't play on anymore, but it was a great field, though.
That's right. And I will mention this, too. In 1928, Peabody, their nickname was the Bulls, Bulls.
Yes.
But they voted in 39, they changed it, and that's what you know today. They're the Golden Tide. And Trenton has won 4 state championships.
Second picture, the 39 team when the nickname changed.
Okay. Yeah.
And Robert didn't know I was bringing these. I just happened to, I thought I know him well. And folks, if you ever can pin him down in a restaurant in Brownsville, corner him and make him drain that knowledge because he's got it.
And Milan has won 5 state championships. Doug Atkins, one of the greatest players ever in pro football, got his start at Humboldt. Was known early on more as a basketball player. I've got a question.
Oh, he was on the state champion 49 team of Humboldt. Yeah. They were undefeated. Yeah. Great one. A couple of other kids out there. Tony Champion, who later played in the Canadian League, didn't make it with the Chargers. Of course, Toby Champion. Rosenfelder. Now, you and I were probably sitting on the bench when Charlie Rosenfelder was in high school.
Yeah.
And maybe even in junior high for part of that. Junior Reed played up there, some great athletes. They've had Punkin Williams.
Yep. In 1956, Haywood County played Jackson High School. I know there was a P.V. Mount. I didn't know him. He scored 19
great
points.
Athlete.
And Jackson beat Brownsville 26-19. Jimmy Wallace was on that team. 1958, Jackson High School had Mike Armstrong. He led the state in scoring with 169 points. Again, the 58 team beat Brownsville 25-14.
Well, y'all played against the late Carlos Spencer, who just died,
sure did.
Passed away. Carlo, a great official, but a great player. Had a scholarship to Vanderbilt.
Yep. Played the same time Larry Banks went.
He sure did. And those were great people. Lawrence Taylor, if you ever go to the Old Country Store, Lawrence was part of the group the family group that started the Old Country Store here, along with the Shaws and stuff. And Lawrence is still alive and kind of heads up our Jackson High alumni on the Facebook. And, well, a lot of great people then that you just mentioned.
Well, here's some names, too. 1959, Libby Cash, David Blackstock, Ray Newdecker. Haywood County won in 59. They beat Jackson 21-13. How about 1961? We're getting on up now. Lanny Daniels, the quarterback was Don Shaver.
Played at UTC.
Had on that team Robert Medlin, Charles Owsley. Haywood County won 6-0 in a playoff game. And that's an interesting game, too. Haywood County and Jackson High School, the Golden Bears, played in 1961 at Rothrock in the mud. Haywood County won the Big Ten championship. Butch Wilson was a star running back. Haywood County gained 149 yards on the ground. Butch Wilson got 144 of the 149. And how can two teams play this evenly? Both teams ran 51 plays. Both teams punted 8 times. There was one pass thrown the entire game because it was muddy. Jackson attempted 7 passes, completed 1 for 5 yards, and Jackson came out in the second half and ran the shotgun, but Haywood won. How about 1962? One of your favorite names. You can spell it. I can't even say it. From Sweden, the kicker.
Ole
Silverstone.
Silvestrian.
Silvestrian.
Yeah.
Okay. That I hate to say it, but in 1962, Jackson smoked Brownsville and Haywood County in the playoff game, 34-7.
And unofficially, he kicked that year the first field goal in 30 years at Jackson.
Oh, they didn't kick
He
much.
was a soccer style.
That's
kicker.
right, he was soccer.
Now, we had the Punch and Judy kickers to kick extra points,
Right.
but we didn't try many extra points. Field goals.
63 here, Jackson stars that you remember getting closer. Dennis Wilson, Al Hubbard, Jack Calhoun, Eden Smith is still around.
Yes.
Jackson had their way in the playoff game, 26-7.
And some statewide sports writers consider that the finest team that's ever played in the state of Tennessee in pre-1970.
That's right. 1963, the first perfect season for Jackson in 24 years. In 1939, they went undefeated. In 1963, 10-0.
And I know where you're headed for the next year.
Here we go. 1964, the quarterback was Terry Bittner. You also had Steve Dennison.
Who
Haywood
was one
County,
of the state's top scorers.
in the regular season, defeated Jackson 14-12. Jackson was number 1 in the state. Haywood County did sneak out a win, but they paid for it in the playoffs a few weeks later.
Yes, they did. Well, the next week, though, let me hold this up, Robert.
Yep.
Grove High out of Paris paid for it the week after with 39-0, but we did the rest of that season without Al Hubbard. He got hurt.
That's right.
In the Haywood game, and it was a good clean
Here's
hit.
what's crazy, Joe. All right, you saw that in the regular season, Haywood County defeated Jackson in Brownsville 14-12. Then we'd play in the playoff game. One of our best and go-to running backs was a fullback named Jerry Hughes. Jerry Hughes touched the football most 2/3 of the time we had a running play. In the playoff game that Jackson won in 1964 by the score of 27-0, Jerry Hughes never touched the football. Now, did John Hooper outguess himself? I don't know what he was doing, but we did not. Then in 1965, how about Jackson Northside? How about Don McCleary? Haywood County, and you call it a slobber knocker, but Haywood County defeated Northside 27-26 in 1965. David Jennings, great ball player out of Ripley. George Tyree, all West Tennessee and Trenton. Larry Stewart, didn't tell you that. He started in Fayette County, ended up in Huntington, and played well.
One of their great running backs, like Bobby Hayes was, too,
That's
up
right.
at Huntington.
Austin Thompson out of Ripley in 1984, great running back. In Brownsville, he had Carl Williamson, Darrell Bowles, Carl Walker. We mentioned Jack Kane, Butch Wilson. Jimmy Dickey played here at Jackson.
Went on to Vanderbilt.
1968, and David Wimpy played in 1970.
And he had some time at Ole Miss, I believe.
He did.
For a matter of fact, Freddie Tigg went down to Ole Miss. I don't know. He played, I know, his freshman year. Don't know if he played past that.
And what a coach. Tom Fan, I thought he coached here for 30 years. Coached 5 years, but what a success rate. In 5 years, Tom Fan won 49 games, only lost 5. He averaged losing 1 game a year in 5 years. And Richard Ross, he was a smart man. Look who he had on the staff with him. Tory Omen, John Pechonik, and Dan Bland.
Yep. Jim Hicks was there for 1 year, but Dan took Jim's place. And later on, when it became JCM, he got Tom Crawford, who had been Dyersburg's head coach, to come down here. Then the late Noel Long was promoted there. Don Williams, who had been a star athlete at Camden and had been one of the great junior high coaches and turned out to be a good. He came on to that staff a little later, too. There was some great guys. Coach Ronnie Gray, the former lineman at Mississippi State, was on Richard's staff for a couple of years.
Well, don't forget about Northside, who started it 1947, Thurman Reynolds.
You know what his initials were?
TD.
TD, and you know why? 2 reasons. Now, his real name was Thurman Duval Reynolds, but at DuPont High School, they know him as TD Reynolds because he was Touchdown Reynolds.
Following him was Burris Nichols. Johnny Williams coached.
Yep.
And then O'Neill Henley was 17 years an assistant coach, but head coach 82, 83, 84, wrote a book, Autumn Miracle, in 1982, set the world on fire, and just got a bunch of guys together, and they believed in themselves and believed in O'Neill Henley, and he put it together. What a great guy.
You got to witness one of the upsets of Northside over Haywood. We came out in center eligible that night and never came out of it. Tim Allen was the snapper. You'll see a picture of Tim later because we cover Peabody. Tim's not coaching there anymore. He turned into a basketball coach, but actually – I'm going to go ahead and hold it up because we do Peabody football, and there's their offensive coordinator, Noah Allen, who just happens to be the son of the bald-headed guy who I remind him I've got more hair than he does. He's one of my former players, Northside. Tim Allen, the original center-eligible center around here.
That? Yeah. And then Bud Sykes, coached from 85 to 94.
Yeah, and Bud's a native Northside. He played on some of Burris and Thurman's great teams.
And then we hadn't mentioned Jerry Hayes, 25-year stint at Jackson Southside. Maurice Kelly coached 19 years at Ripley. Interesting story. I like his. A good story.
Well, let me go ahead and get Coach Kelly in, and don't let me leave without saying something about Jack Kane's brother, Gene.
Oh, yeah. Well, anyway, John Hooper could outdo and outfox most people, but Maurice Kelly could get in John's head. So Maurice knew that John Hooper would look at every inch of film and watch every little part of any game to get an advantage, and Ripley and Brownsville always played. Maurice Kelly was the head coach at Ripley, John Hooper head coach at Brownsville. Well, Ripley early in the year played Halls, and Ripley had their way with them, but Kelly knew that John was going to watch everything. Kelly had no intentions of running or using the single wing formation, but he lined up in the single wing against Halls, and then got out there and carried on like, y'all don't do this, and so John watched it. So all week long, getting ready for Ripley, John was waiting he practiced against the single wing. Kelly had no intention of doing the single wing, and Kelly could beat John more. Now Tom Fan had his way. Don't get me wrong. John Hooper only had 1 win against Tom Fan in the history of things. But Kelly could get in John's head, and I love that story. He's set up like he was going to run the single wing against John, and he didn't run it at all. But I think Kelly won that game. Kelly had some good athletes. The other game we talk about there was 1958. Kelly was coaching. Larry Banks was one of our star players. We had Donald Edwards at quarterback. We're playing at Ripley. The final score was 3-2. Ripley beat Brownsville, a field goal versus a safety. And Larry Banks was theoretically stopped on the goal line, which we all think in Brownsville, how can that happen? And anyway, at one time, Kelly was so outdone with what was going on. Brownsville was driving down the field. They said the superintendent got the microphone from the PA guy and called timeout. we can't do that. But they stopped the game. Kelly regrouped. Anyway, Ripley beat Brownsville 3-2 in 1958. And let me read it. This is that same night in that same game. The field had this dedication. There's a granite marker that stands there today. It says, Irvin Nee, called Tiny, but great in his vision and in his labor, in the building of this field and in the building of men. It's Irvin Tiny Nee.
Absolutely. We've still got a few more names. We're going to come back for a third segment in a few moments, but I want to remind you of the great football that's going to be presented to you. We named these teams earlier. Something I needed to have done is remind you to stay tuned on the July 16th and 17th, Thursday the 16th actually, at 5 o'clock, you're going to get to see about 16 or more of the area's coaches at a media day brought to you by Sports 731 and it's a Sports 731 network. And we've got an app, we've got a Facebook page, we've got sports731network.com. Forever Communications, giants in the field of not only radio but digital, and of course the leader in digital sports here in West Tennessee. We have that media day, mostly Jackson area schools, and then on Friday the 17th at approximately 11 a.m. there will be the media day for the teams up in that area, and the teams that we cover, they will be there. Some teams we don't cover with our football broadcast, but we cover them with information and things like that. They'll be there. You'll want to stay tuned for that and see that live. Plus, it'll be archived where if you miss it, you can go back and see it, just like this show will be. And we may not get all the information in today. Well, we may put the get Dr. Rooks to twist his arm and make him come back another day. Robert, if we needed to, could we come back and do this again? And Robert may even sit in with us on a Friday when we do our Pick'em show and preview the games that we're doing that week. And, of course, he's got insights being Haywood's broadcaster. That ought to be a law against him and Greg Van Story, his color man, having as much fun as they do on their broadcasts too. But those are some of the great things that are happening here at the Sports 731 Network. And we're going to take our next time out and come back and for a third session. These will be archived. They may go over 30 minutes because Dr. Rooks and I probably could have talked for 5 hours. And we're trying to give you the quickest information and do 100 or more years in less than that. We'll have some more modern times. Robert, we've got some games we need to take a look at. Some of them white knucklers, some of them slobber knockers. There's some that were tight, some that are unusual. We've still got some players, and there's a ton of pro players out of the West Tennessee area. JCM alone has provided several. We're going to save those things for the next segment. We're going to take a time out, as Dick Vitale would say. Get it to you, old baby, and we'll be back with more.